Hey guys, Jessie here from Tonkadale, and today we're talking about plants for beginners, intermediate growers, and maybe our more advanced plant parents. However, I've chosen these plants based on my experience and some of my opinions about whether or not they're easy, moderate, or difficult to grow, but I do think all are attainable if you have the right conditions. Here at Tonkadale, we define 3 types of light characteristics in your home. First is bright light. Bright light is going to be natural bright light, a room where it feels really sunny and warm, those spots where the cat likes to lay. They're usually western and southern exposures with full open windows and not a lot of tree cover. Medium light, as we move around the room, is going to be more of an eastern exposure, or that bright light exposure with more of a dappled light situation or a little bit of tree cover. And low light is going to be moving into kind of those northern or eastern exposures where there's more tree cover and not a lot of bright light throughout the day. It is recommended that all of your plants do see the sky. So from wherever they're sitting, they should be able to see some sky at whatever angle you can get for them. The Sansevieria is for the beginner in a low light situation. They love to be pot bound, so this plant has a ton of room to grow. So this plant will be able to stay in this pot for several years. It's only time to transplant when this is busting out of the pot or the pot changes from a circular shape to an oval shape because it gets so tight in the pot. Next, in the beginner category, we're going to move to our medium light situations. I chose the peperomias for a medium light beginner. I water them probably every 10 days or more, and I just take them to the sink, soak them, and place them back in their pot. Next, in the easy category, we're going to move to highlight or bright light. The 2 categories of cactus that you're going to find in garden centers are kind of your true cactus and then a plant species called euphorbia. In my opinion, the euphorbias do need a little bit more water because they are pretty fleshy, but something this large isn't going to require watering quite so frequently. This smaller cactus I would take to the sink about once per month, water it thoroughly, let it drain, and put it back in its location. This category of plants is for the intermediate grower. It's for those plant people that want to branch out, if you know what I mean. In the low light category, I chose the aglaonema. These are very tolerant of low light. However, they do require more attention than something like the Sansevieria. So the aglaonema is going to need to be watered maybe once per week or every 7 to 10 days. In the off season, I would say probably 10 to 14 days, depending on the situation in your house, how large the plant is. Smaller plants will need to be watered more frequently than larger plants. Think about the soil volume and how much water holding capacity that has. Secondly, for the intermediate grower, I picked the ZZ. It is a low light tolerant plant and also has very low watering requirements. I think it needs a little bit more light than we give it credit for. I've struggled a little bit with my ZZ plant because I believe the light is too low. And when the light is too low, the leaves, the new growth begins to stretch and becomes kind of pale in color versus changing to that dark green as it developed. This is Ficus elastica ruby, or rubber tree. I love this for its really pretty variegation. And one thing to know is the more light you give this plant, the more the color will show up. The reason I'm choosing it as an intermediate level plant is because without enough light, this plant tends to stretch and grow and become very unruly. So you also need to learn some of the pruning basics for this plant. Next up for the intermediate grower is our bright light location plant. What I chose is the aloe, kind of the introduction to succulents. Succulents have kind of had a reputation for being a really easy plant, but they're not so easy indoors. They're a little bit fussy if you're not giving them exactly what they need. The aloe plant is really juicy. It's going to love that bright light location and infrequent watering. All right, so this just in, when you're harvesting your aloe plant, pick a thick long leaf from the base of the plant. It's best to harvest with a clean sharp knife, so whack it off, rub it on. Moving on to the more difficult or finicky plants, or plants for the more advanced grower. I do not intend to steer you away. Some people have better luck with some plants than others. For low light, we've chosen the calathea as a plant for advanced growers. Calatheas really need high humidity, consistent temperature. They do tolerate low light, But without that high humidity and consistent temperature, you'll see even in the greenhouse, you're gonna get some browning on the edges. Now that's okay because these leaves are near the bottom of the plant and those are always the first to senesce. So we can just take that off. Within the Calathea family, there are beautiful specimens that are highly sought after, but just make sure you're prepared to give it the love and care it needs. I'm gonna say Hoyas are for the advanced growers because you need to be careful with the amount of water they're getting, the amount of drainage, and the porosity of the planter that you put it in. I chose the Hindu rope Hoya as kind of the most difficult of the Hoyas, not because it's difficult to grow in your home. This plant can harbor insects. See all those cracks and crevices and curls and twirls? That's where those dreaded mealybugs can hide. And so I'm classifying this as a difficult plant just because if you do get an infestation that gets out of hand, this plant is destined for the dumpster. For the advanced grower in the bright light category, I'm going right to ficus. The one that we all know and love is the fiddle leaf fig. Some people call it the finicky leaf fig. And the only reason I would say it's for the advanced grower is because you have to have the right location and get your watering schedule down pat. Within that ficus category, there are many different varieties. This one is Ficus altissima, and you can see there's a variegated flavor and a green flavor. The green flavor is a little bit more forgiving and can tolerate a little bit lower light, but you see with this bright yellow variegation, that's just craving sunlight and bright light so that it can collect enough of the sun energy to make sugar. This is Ficus Danielle, and if you're doing something more in a tree form, this one's got a lot of vegetation, so I would be watering this one about once a week with a liter or a liter and a half of water. Really your biggest savior for ficus is making sure they have enough bright light. When the watering gets a little out of whack, because you know we're human and we forget things, they can bounce back more quickly. I hope you liked our introduction to plants for beginners, intermediate growers, and advanced plant growers. There are thousands of additional plant varieties and choices in the greenhouse. And while I may have classified something as easy, medium, or hard, don't be afraid to try it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at Tonkadale.